Are you telling me you want me to keep on the cat ears?
The cat ears stay on.
The cat ears stay on during our dissection of Nier Automata. Yeah. And apparently for my first essay too, so like, yeah, I guess. We'll be doing a recap of Murdered Soul Suspect's bigger plot points, so beware of spoilers if you care. Even though I haven't played every horror game known to man, I've watched a lot of creators I look up to do it for me. I've only recently gotten the majority of the Resident Evil games and haven't gone through Silent Hill at all. Witnessed my dad checking out Dead Space, and I'm sitting here like, yeah, this shit's my brand. My horror experiences have mainly been from a ton of indie games like Eve and Madfather and Masao and Ione and The Witch's House, The Crooked Man, Amori. I'm feeling like there's a theme of RPG Maker games that may or may not have shaped my taste overall. Anyway, anything creepy grabs my attention. Anything that opens up big questions grabs my attention. So when I saw a game that gave the promise of solving your own death as a ghost, I was like, you fucking kidding? That sounds cool as hell! Now, I first played Murdered Soul Suspect back in 2016, and that was through Xbox's monthly gold games, and despite the fact I got it with the subscription, I still wish I got a refund for it. It was just a game that filled teenage Alexi with just pure disappointment to the point I get mad anytime I totally remember it. Like, working through the script, I've only gotten more and more annoyed by the game, and it's one I can say with full confidence I actually hate. And while I totally hate what the game is, I think I'm more annoyed from the fact that it didn't take that extra step to become something that could have been like really fucking good. And so I made it a subathon goal in July to revisit Murdered and give it a second shot. It did not redeem itself for me. At all. So how bad could a game about solving your own murder be? Well, we'll do a recap and a bit of a review, so listen up, bookworms, because your local librarian is about to be mean. But I mean, according to my Twitch chat, people seem to like that, so take it as you will. You're a detective named Ronan O'Connor, and we're introduced to him getting absolutely QCQ'd by the person he's chasing down. It's one hell of an entry, you have to admit, having our main character's life literally flash before his eyes to kick off Act 1. He is finished off by his own gun with a very excessive 7 bullets to the chest, and our story starts just as soon as his ends. Poetic, ain't it? So, Ronan is dead, but he's not allowed to move on to the afterlife yet. His equally as dead wife, Julia, tells us that we've got to finish up some business before we can cross. See, the game isn't so much about solving our own death as advertised, but to close the case of the guy we were chasing, the Bell Killer. We know how he died, we just don't know who the Bell Killer is. And until we figure that out, he's just going to continue haunting Salem. Oh yeah, this game takes place in Salem. You know what I love about media that takes place in Salem? It's predictable. The most commonly known thing about Salem is the witch trials, and in said trials, Abigail Williams is a very popular name. She was said to be one of the first people to accuse others of witchcraft, and one who had done it the most. And why do I bring this up? Well, most media I see that takes place in Salem takes the easy way out and bases the plot either on witches, or on the trials, or on the idea of mass paranoia. Very commonly, they introduce Abigail as a character too, or introduce someone who was inspired by her. Like we have Fate Grand Order, who has her controlled by an eldritch god, but she's still featured within a story revolving around the trials. Though I guess in this case they were kind of right when they accused her of witchcraft, huh? And in the Dark Pictures anthology, A Little Hope, it has ghosts themed after Abigail and the Reverend of that story. There's continuous flashbacks to that time too, as the ghosts you are facing in combat are based upon those that were accused. And I mention this because Murdered Soul Sus isn't innocent of this, but they take it in a weird direction. So Ronan's dead, and while we're trying to get the attention of some living people, we catch this ghost girl running away from the murder scene. Victorian looking, braided hair, obviously not our time. After catching up, she explains that our strengths in life become stronger in death. And as a detective, Ronan's able to influence people's thoughts to get clues, and able to see remnants of people's actions to piece together a recollection of the past. We need to be able to see these flashbacks, otherwise we never beat this fucking game. Because most of our discoveries are through flashbacks. Like, we don't actually get to make any big discoveries ourselves. We just get to see what happened and piece everything together. So Rodan returns to the crime scene, and our first investigation segment properly begins. We're introduced to a bastard of a man named Baxter, who makes fun of our death, and our brother-in-law Rex, who absolutely socks him for it. You know what? Maybe not all cops are totally bad. But our own crime scene introduces the investigation mechanics. Main occurrence is possessing people to read their thoughts, eavesdrop, and look at any documents in their view. We use these and items around the level to find leads and bring our investigations to an end. As a gameplay mechanic, it was really cool in the beginning, though there's barely indication of what's a collectible hint. The difficulty of it comes from a mix of the hitboxes and visibility, because I could be right on top of a hint and not be able to interact with it. Within these segments, there is one big question that you have to answer, and the hints are supposed to be the answers. Out of 10 or so in most areas, one of them has to be right? They're honestly more tedious than rewarding, to be real with you. Some just slow down the game by asking you what's making a noise, or the answer is a plot point that was mentioned 2 minutes ago. Instead of making you feel like you're learning something, it slows everything down without a big reason. These questions even have multiple hints sometimes that you need to use, and most of the time the game demands that you put them in a order of hint discovery rather than the order of events. Under her fiance's ex, the self-game. You don't think he wouldn't have spoken about that?
I wonder if he still thinks of her.
Okay, see this is the other thing. When it comes to like the hint system like this, the way I'm reading it, and it could just be my autistic ass, but the way I'm reading it, it's like kind of asking you, hey, what's the specific thing that's gonna make this person think of this? So you think like with the old couple, it's like, oh, maybe like there was like the gardening tools, or like the location itself would spark the memory. Or like this here, where it's like, oh yeah, talking about her demise, like maybe that specifically would remind her of the ex, but not just the actual fucking heartbreak. Like the image. It just doesn't feel like it matches what it's trying to hint towards. Honestly, game. Probably the game. None of it makes sense. Okay, so I'm not alone in this. Cool. This is what I mean when I said it has a lot of good ideas, but the execution is just a little... Yeah? Like, the demons as chaser enemies are so easy to manipulate and kill. They're not a threat at all. The detective section of these, like, parts... They're so fucking vague that you're stuck wondering, was that the right option? Before you even press the goddamn button. And there are so many little things that are so close to each other that it's like, no, realistically, that seems like it makes sense. Like, this specific item should be able to trigger that memory. And then lo and behold, it's a fucking lie. It doesn't trigger that memory. God.
That's why he's always been weird how things work out.
See, but this is exactly what I mean with this here. That's exactly what I mean with this here. With like, even that conversation, it just says like, oh yeah, like because of the heartbreak. But that self-ending was the reason why he was heartbroken. This is what I mean. Like, the answers themselves logically should give the result, but it's asking you for one thing and then saying, oh, actually you should have used the original concept as an answer. It's like, oh, did he cheat on her? A shoulder to cry on.
See, and even this, I'm sitting here. This is fine. I reached towards that one a little quick, but this is where I'm like, answers matter. But what do they want first? Do they want the broken heart, or do we want the fact that she committed self-ending? Because I'm gonna go. Because this is the order of operations I'm thinking. For her, for her questioning, it's like it was the self-ending, it was a broken hearting, and then it came into a shoulder to cry on. But let's see. It's fucking wrong! But it's fucking wrong! Because what they want you to say... Yeah, that made sense though, exactly. What they want you to say is the order of operations is important. This happened first. The suicide happened first, which caused his heartbreak, which caused them to meet. But no, they want to say it was a broken heart because she caused, like, suicide. So then he met her.
And you get punished if you're incorrect. Yeah, punished. Fun fact, you have 3 points for each of these question segments. You get one wrong, you lose a point until you're left at 1. It's some serious whose line is it anyway shit, cause the points do not matter. They don't add any more information. They're not contributed to any achievements. They are completely and utterly pointless. But missing some still makes you feel bad. It's an unneeded stress in a game that doesn't really make you stressed to begin with. Like, how does an arbitrary point system make me more stressed than the rush of the plot? Now, right, crime scene, right. We head inside the building and we're introduced to the idea of side quests, as previously mentioned. And besides the fact that Ronan's a detective, why? He's built up as this guy who rushes into danger without a second thought, who's reckless as all hell. Ronan is a selfish prick who dances around the trouble he gets into because he's gotten a good life after one of crime. And a lot of that was from his upbringing and before he met Julia, sure, but it still shows in the present day. But now he's dead. He doesn't need to help these people. The only reason why he's a cop is because Rex convinced them his street smarts from his criminal life would be good for the job. This is a guy who was so dead set, on catching the Bell Killer that he died for it. He's not getting anything out of helping these people, and there's not really any signs that he's trying to do better in death than in life, because for a game that's so linear in its story, these side quests just similarly seem pointless. But, right, yeah, we went into the building, right. After we wander around, we're introduced to demons. They're not scary. At all. It's stupid easy to get the jump on them by using these little hiding spots, and later on by using distractions like crows. Said distractions don't expire after you use them either. You just activate it once and the demon's back is exposed as soon as it paths back over to it. But if you do end up getting caught, all you need to do is hop between hiding spaces and wait 30 seconds for them to lose interest. The best part is that you're able to kill them. Sneak up behind them, hold a button, do a little quick time event, and bam, demon exercise. Again, with all honesty, it's more of an obstacle than a threat. It slows us down more on the way to the next area. We don't need combat, we need a compelling story. And guess what we sacrifice to get demons? So we get past the demons, go to the apartment we got QCQ'd out of, and find hints as to why the killer was there. See, back on the streets, a cop had notes of 2 tenants missing, Cassandra and Joy. And in the apartment, we find hints that one of them is actually in hiding. We find that the killer had entered on his own and a girl was fleeing out the window. So he had to be after one of them before we interrupted. We followed the girl out the window and to the local church after some more searching, because I'm gonna just slap both pieces of information together. Joy is the girl that we saw in the flashback. Her mother, Cassandra, is a medium working with the police as a profiler who vanished one day without warning. Joy's a medium too, and is able to see and talk to Ronan. Ronan needs to find the killer, and Joy wants to find her mother. They can't do one without the other, as her mother was giving her notes about the killer, and the killer wants to leave her noted within the local obituaries. This is where Joy reveals that she found a letter from her mother over at the apartment, telling her to find her book, hinting that the killer might have found her already, hence her sudden disappearance and hiding. Ronan thinks that her mom's book, and in turn the case notes, would likely be at the police station, leading Joy to rush out to find it. But Ronan tries to convince her that they need to go together, and she just fucking yells loud enough to apparently make him stumble backwards. Yeah, mediums have to scream that hurts ghosts, and it's never explained at all. Like, it's mainly just used to give us an indication that that person is a medium. If there's any actual, like, supernatural explanation related to a medium being able to yell loud enough to disorient a ghost, I would honestly love to know, because the only thing that I could think of was the closest would be, like, a banshee's scream. So I'm legitimately curious. So, police station. We chase after Joy, who obviously gets caught and locked away for breaking in, and it forces Ronan to break her out in turn. The only real clue that they have as to where the book could be is that her mom worked with a dude she just called the Bastard. So Ronan figures it should be Baxter because the guy is a massive dick. The station is essentially a massive escort mission. The main issue I had is that as you guide Joy for the station, progression is tied to you interacting with her after she's moved. So cutscenes have to be started by you talking to her, instead of being automatically started when you approach her and she's safe, which is really weird because they've had automatic progression in other areas while you're guiding Joy. So why weren't the rest of them automatic too? You know what we can't have in Murdered Soul Suspect? Quality of life, bookworms. Quality of fucking life. So they end up finding her mom's book, and Butterfinger's Joy over here lets some pages fall out of it, showcasing a little snippet about the town's museum. But no, that's not where we're going next. We just need it so Ronan can see it for a investigation minigame later on, where he can go, that's right, I saw that photo in this thing, and then we know where to go because of convenience. So they got the book, we do more escort missions, we do more manual triggers of cutscenes, and they get out. And Joy is really keen on leaving O'Connor by ducking out a window and closing it. Oh, Jesus. But he's the detective. That book's not gonna tell her where her mom is, it's just notes on finding the bell killer. So they find the bell killer, they can find her mom, right? Look, Ronan knows that he can't solve this by being dead. He needs Joy at this point, and for him, finding her mom's a second thought. It's leverage. It's just a repeat of that initial conversation in the attic, because they gotta show they're not wanting to work together, but have to meet each other's ends. At least Joy agrees with him this time. Their next lead is from a note within her mom's book mentioning they can't see it, but it's there. See, her mom thought there was a case at the local graveyard that the police couldn't find originally, so it's off to the graveyard. With convenience. Ideally, the perfect place to take your local goth girl, me, and make out with them. Look, I don't have too many good date ideas, okay? Joy still leaves to collect something before she goes to the graveyard, so Ronan goes off on his own to begin with. And square one, Ronan is being stalked by a ghost that looks like she's seen way better days. Now, once Joy arrives again, she can't really find any clues until Ronan clues in, and discovers some rope in a bush by the river. If there was a murder here, it could have been anywhere upstream. So Joy joins in and mentions a potential murder victim with a photo within her mom's book, to which Ronan recognizes her as the ghost that's been following him. Now, I know I'm pulling the convenience card again, but this one actually makes a little bit of sense. If her mom had thought that there was a case here, and she thought it was related to this missing girl, it makes perfect sense why she would have her photo. Cassandra's a medium. She can see the ghosts. She can use that photo and use it to profile the ghosts. It makes sense. It makes sense for what they're trying to build up here. So this entire segment here is Ronan chasing after the potential murder victim, who we find is named Sophia, and discovering how to do short teleports along the way. Yeah, he just says he better figure out how to do it because she is, and he does it. He just figures it out. Hi, it's editing Alexi. Yeah, when I was recording the gameplay footage for this again, I was doing so on like my keyboard and mouse, which I wasn't used to. Now, I don't think it's a case of like it being from the PC port or because I was playing it a second time over, but the tutorial just never appeared and I didn't know what controls to use, so I legitimately had to just figure it out too. And even if the ghost teleportation is supposed to be a common ability, it feels really tacked on. Like, this isn't a skill that we've learned from learning how to use our body as a ghost or like out of experimentation, but rather it was a fact that, oh, I need to get past this, I can't get past this. What will get me past this? Teleportation. I better figure out how to do it. Okay, I'm allowed to pull the convenience card here. If there was no way of us being able to teleport, we wouldn't have been able to get past this section, with it being made entirely out of the ghost plane and within this hospital area. So there is no way that we would have feasibly been able to continue without this cop-out mechanic. But I think that's the thing that annoys me the most about it. There's no build-up, there's no him trying it and missing his teleport. He just knows instantly how to do it. So we teleport after teleporting Sophia, and it turns out that she was leading him to her murder site. Since she can't speak, she can't really tell, so she has to show. When he mentions he is trying to find her killer, she points to him. Like, yeah, he's a cop. Supposedly, he's trying to help. We get to see another ability of his when he grabs onto Sophia's arm. Like his flashbacks in the crime investigation scenes, when he grabs onto Sophia's arm, he can see her last memories, which reveal she was being pressured about some contract by the Bell Killer. She doesn't know anything, and without another word, the Bell Killer brings her to an end, tied to a chair, marked with a symbol, and drowned in the lake. Ronan tries to pressure her for more answers, but she screams before teleporting away. A medium scream that rocks his socks. So, Sophia was a medium. Ronan explains the death conditions to Joy, and she pulls up another possible case with a survivor, Iris Campbell, who's in a mental hospital, who was giving incoherent ramblings about persecution and a contract. And a contract. Similarities. Convenient, isn't it? Next lead, next area, next headache. If you can't tell already, the game really wants to be some sort of Sherlock mystery that blows your mind with its twists and turns, but the pacing is just rough. The leads mostly seem like coincidences rather than something that it's built up to, making it come off as more of a "and then we went here" kind of story. Like, for a detective game, you're not really made to feel like you're solving or discovering anything. For a supernatural thriller, they somehow made ghosts really mundane and their abilities feel like second thoughts. The one thing the game excels at is coming off like a trope-riddled detective movie, which can be endearing, but the negatives of the gameplay and the story pacing just outweigh the positives of the possible campiness. The story feels empty, and there's a big reason for that, I think. So every area has a number of collectibles that you can gather outside of the hints related to investigations that give either more insight into a character or a previous event within Salem. There are 242 collectibles in the, when I played it, 7-hour story. To get 100%, it's a median of about 12 hours. So in most moments of gameplay, I had bursts of gathering a bunch of collectibles as I walked around the levels, and with some spaces there was just nothing at all. So why are there so many collectibles that aren't placed within investigation sessions, that aren't related to the investigations themselves? Why do I need to collect 242 collectibles to learn about Ronan and his wife or about prior events in Salem? The vast majority of them aren't even related to the Bell Killer case. They just act as a ton of filler to try and make the game feel longer, and for the sake of giving you something that you can earn achievements for. And because the levels are all fairly linear, you're not really encouraged to go back to them and to search for previous spots. If you miss items, you're basically having to restart your game. And at the least, the collected items do carry over for achievements, but it's a really weird sense in having that encouraged exploration through the majority of your collectibles giving you story elements versus not really having too much of an incentive to collect them outside of more information. Since they don't change the story itself at all, you could collect none of them and it would just end all the same. It's all bragging rights for this game of all games, and any of the information they had in these codexes could have been made story related. There could have been conversations with Ronan and Joy where he goes into depth about his wife and she goes into depth about her mom. They could have had proper conversations on why Joy was so scared for her mom, or why Ronan was so dead set on solving this case. I can't stop using that pun, can I? It all boils back down to convenience. Like, they're just working with each other because they kind of have to. And it's not entirely a bad plot point, but we could have had a lot more of an emotional connection to these two if they had that chance to explain their reasonings. But no, the collectibles are a mix of unrelated stories and background information that we would have otherwise never have known, because the characters never talk about them. But this is all part of a bigger issue. All we really know about Ronan is that he wants to move on and meet his wife again, so he has to solve this case. He's just a bit of a dick while he's doing it. And all we know about Joy is that she has a hard time trusting the dead because of how many of them have just wanted to use her to pass along messages, to offer them ways of moving on, to just get them out of the hell that is limbo. But that's honestly it. We don't get any big emotional moments between the two of them, so there's nothing that we really need to feel bad for when something bad happens. And every time that Joy gets captured by the cops because she's breaking into places, you have to basically go, well, sucks to suck. Like, yes, we understand why she's doing it, but she refuses to listen and rushes into danger herself, just like Ronan does. But now, with that said, it may be a case of similar personalities conflicting. But these characters are so bare bones, that's all they have. Okay. I probably went on a little bit of a tangent here, but I'm trying to get a point across. We have this vast amount of collectibles, and most of them are just superficial. They give us unrelated stories, or they tell us things that we already knew from a different person's perspective. The only collectibles that are of any actual use would be like the Bell Killer's notes, because that's hinting towards what he's trying to do. All of these collectibles just feel so out of place. Like, I'm feeling I have to be on the lookout to collect them, but none of them are really Bell Killer related, and they're not hints. So for someone who wants to solve his case so he can be with his wife, Ronan sure gets distracted. Like me! We should talk about that mental hospital segment. Iris Campbell is scheduled for electroshock therapy. And there's honestly no point in talking about what leads up to them reaching her room because it's all filler. So they get to her room before she's set up to be zapped, thank God, and she's clearly distressed, muttering to herself while rocking in her bed. When they try to approach, she yells at them for wanting to hurt her sister, where she jolts out of bed and starts scribbling on the walls. But unsurprisingly, Iris also has that medium scream, so they try to tell her that they are looking to help, but she ignores them. Although conveniently from the scribblings, Ronan's able to figure out that she and her sister Rose were captured by the Bell Killer, with a little bit of help of detective flashbacks. Iris got away, but Rose wasn't able to free herself before she was burned at a stake. Now, I'm not talking a fine cut of meat, I'm talking about like the wooden stake where you would burn a witch. Pause for dramatic effect. The reason why Iris is acting all nuts is because her sister Rose was possessing her. Rose's last attempt to protect her sister ended up being for the worst in a bittersweet way. But once they get Iris outside, she fills us in that the Bell Killer wasn't trying to find out about any contracts, but to get them to admit they had contracts. With demons. Drowned while tied to a chair, burned at the stake, and he's been accusing them of having contracts with demons. On top of that, any of these girls who were murdered by the Bell Killer have been mediums, thanks to us knowing that by their screams. So anyway, remember when Butterfinger's Joy dropped that pamphlet and Ronan saw the stake? Yeah, he recognizes it from the flashback and figures, well, the museum must be connected now. Well, it's not just shown in the cutscene. No. We're given an investigation minigame to figure out where we've seen this stake before. Which is honestly hilarious, because out of 12 hints that they give us, the one correct hint has the fucking stake in the preview image of said hint. So Ronan decides he's going to go investigate the museum. He tells Joy to take Iris to the church to keep her safe, and he heads off. An exhibit about the witch trials. We got it. There it is. There's the easy way out. We got it. It's the fucking witch trials. Yeah. The murders are recreations of the witch trials. Each quote-unquote trial is able to be interacted with, and it shows us what they've done. And on the gallows, we see a very familiar ghost in the flashback. It's the one from the start of the game, and one we've seen occasionally watching us. And lucky for us, they even say her name. Can you guess who it is? I mean, it takes place in Salem. It's the witch trials. It's Abigail Williams. They have Abigail Williams, and she's one of the ghosts that have been interacting with us. The ever important trial is the stoning, not the fun kind, the bone-crushing kind, where we hear a man telling the person to admit to having a contract with demons. It's the witch trials. We have Abigail Williams, and we've got the other big note. We're killing mediums because they're witches. See, yeah, murdered soul suspect takes the easy way out and bases it upon not only the witch trials, but also makes Abigail Williams a prevalent character. But it's still not done. I still can't fully believe the way that they've done this, so hold on to your seats. But for now, Ronan catches wind that there's some artifacts in the upper floors, so he heads upstairs to check them out. Meanwhile, we do catch Joy sneaking in through the window, so we just head up with her and get her up to date. Through one of the artifacts present, a crystal, we get confirmation that mediums were basically considered witches because they can commune with the dead. We also get to find a painting that has the Bell Killer's symbol on it. And we get to see in our little flashback that Baxter's been here for whatever reason. And that's really all that's important. So Ronan tells Joy to head back to the church while he checks out Baxter's apartment. But when he leaves the museum, there's cop cars rushing down towards the church. So guess where we're off to next? Joy very obviously gets caught trying to sneak into a crime scene, but we get word from the other cops that Baxter hasn't shown up at all. When we get inside, we find Iris, dead in the courtyard unfortunately, having been crushed to death by a large stone statue. And with all honesty, Iris and Rose are the two I really only had emotion for. Like, I'm the oldest of 4 siblings. If I was the first to go, I would absolutely love the idea of being able to watch over them in the afterlife. And being able to see this scene of Iris and Rose passing on into the afterlife, it's honestly a little sweet. Despite, the occurrences. So Ronan decides to investigate further and heads inside the church. We actually head into a wedding party that got absolutely trashed, and it turned out that Iris was running through it to try and get away from the Bell Killer, who demolished anyone who tried to keep him back. The funny, quote-unquote, thing about this is that they are not intentional victims. They had just gotten in the way, much like Ronan had. But we make our way up into the attic, and unfortunately we find that the priest that was really nice to Joy had been killed too, for the same reasons. And it's supposed to be really sad, but honestly, I'm just growing more impressed by the fact that the Bell Killer is able to end these poor people in swipes of his arm and single punches in the walls. He's got one fucking hell of a build. If this guy goes to the gym, I need his workout playlist. We get to see another flashback and get to see the priest leading Iris into the attic, talking about how rooming with Joy can be a little bit of a pain, but she's actually pretty nice and, blah, 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 blah. But the Bell Killer was already there. He was after Joy, and Iris was just a convenient case of lost and found. Honestly, she may have been safer in the mental hospital, as cruel as it sounds. And in the Bell Killer's chase, he conveniently drops a key, which Roden finds, and his flashbacks show him to a place called the Judgment House. It's where the Bell Killer's probably hiding out. So guess where we're going? Like, I'm gonna say it again, this is a major case of just conveniences lining up. Because in reality, no living person should be able to solve this Bell Killer case. Like, this would be a man who would be on a rampage no matter what, because no one would be able to catch him if they were alive. And the only reason why we know where he's going is because he was stupid enough to drop a fucking key. We're almost done. We're almost done. We approach the house, Roden sees a light on, and the cop car pulled up to the front. We know why Baxter wasn't at the scene of the crime, so we find the killer's war room and get confirmation that Joy was supposed to be his target for tonight. After snooping around some more, we find Baxter dead in the basement. Thankfully, his ghost is still around, so he tells us that he got into a tussle with the Bell Killer, and he actually spoke. He had said that his instrument of death will kill tonight, despite the fact that he's killed everyone in a different way so far. On a happy note, he confirms that Cassandra is still alive and at a safe house. So Baxter leaves to check on her, and Roden snoops around some more for flashbacks.
Stern. Accusing. Judging.
You claim righteousness, but you know your guilt and cannot deny your punishment is due.
Hey, look. It's the fucking girl!
You stood for justice. How is this just?
Imprisoned Abigail!
Okay. But you want to hear the best part? She draws the Bell Killer symbol, proclaiming that it'll burn like a brand within the flesh of Salem, that she'll personally make the bell toll for every fucking witch. Abigail is the Bell Killer. Apparently they didn't have enough by referencing the trials or including her as a character. They had to make her the fucking villain, too. Now, having a ghost be a serial killer is a cool idea and concept, and it explains why the Bell Killer couldn't be tracked too easily. Abigail's own powers of manipulation have given her a far stronger form of possession, as she's able to take someone's body without them recalling what's happened. Which on top of that, she's able to grant them inhuman strength and endurance. So it kind of explains why the Bell Killer was so hard to track down in the first place. We have no idea how many times Abigail's done this, but if her killers are untraceable without leaving anything behind, no hair, no fingerprints, no anything, she would have maybe had the experience by making mistakes with previous bodies. But this brings up a really good question. How do we deal with a ghost serial killer? We can exorcise demons as Ronin, but there's been no proof outside of helping someone move along and solving their deaths cases that we're able to do the same to ghosts. Mediums are only able to see and hear ghosts. They can't dispel them fully. Like, if their medium scream was strong enough to do so, when Sophie had screamed at us, we would have assumably been toast. So what the fuck do we do? Call a priest? Oh. Right. Anyway, Abigail's the killer, and the instrument of death was the gallows that she was hung from. So guess where we're going. Back at the museum, Ronan finds that Rex has been possessed by Abigail. Joy's about to be hung, and they really have functional medieval murder devices at museums. Like, they don't add restrictions to make them inoperable. They're just fully functional. I don't know. It just seems like a huge safety violation. Am I wrong in that? Fun thing is, 2 cops even enter, and Abigail quickly possesses them and forces them to shoot themselves. This girl is a menace, and I've never wanted to hit a kid as much as I do with this rendition of Abigail. There's just no regret in her murders. There's no reasoning with her. She's on a path of destruction, and there is no leaving it. And the second you're not buying what she's selling, she goes straight into the idea of killing you too. This Abigail is a straight up bitch. So to avoid letting Joy be hanged, Ronan quickly possesses her and forces her medium scream. This one being a proper wail, and it's strong enough to knock Abigail's body out of Rex, letting Ronan grab onto her arm and take her back to the time of her death. I mean, what else are you going to do to distract a murderous child? Like I said, this is a girl who is hell-bent on murder, who is hell-bent on destroying mediums who she believes are witches. There's not going to be any reasoning with her. There's not going to be any way of helping her move on. This is her purpose. This is why she's staying. But apparently Abigail has that same ability, forcing Ronan to flash back to him getting thrown out the window. He's unfazed, and he takes a chance to interrogate her about his own death. Well, I mean, we get some interesting info at the very least, like she used Rex to kill Ronan, which is a dick move, and she kills all the people she puppets eventually. Baxter had just been killed faster because he had gotten close to figuring her out. But even with Cassandra's help, if she was able to identify Abigail, what would they do? Again, there's no way of showing ways of dispelling a ghost outside of helping them find peace in their death. Like with Iris and Rose finally being able to reunite. So what's the plan here? And if it's just a case of Abigail using a new puppet for every murder, how are you supposed to track down who she's possessing? And even if the medium scream is able to knock people out of possession, what the fuck is she gonna do? Walk up to everyone on the street and yell at them? Okay, getting off track again. So, Ronan asks her why he had to die since he wasn't one of her killers. Well, surprise. Ronan was actually possessed to kill Sophia, the girl from the graveyard. And you remember how I mentioned that she pointed to Ronan when he said he was tracking her killer? She was pointing at her killer. Now, this is one of the only nice twists in this game. I like this one. This one was fun. But that's enough of a shock to make Ronan let Abigail go. And surprisingly, he doesn't let the shock linger. He very quickly accepts that Abigail was the one that made him do it, and this is a story beat that, again, I like. Why does it have to be at the end of the game? Like, Ronan's a tough guy, and the idea of killing someone would rock most people, but he doesn't blame himself. He knows he was forced to do it. He knows that it was because of Abigail's influence that he killed Sophia. So, unsurprisingly, Abigail summons a pit of demon hands underneath of Ronan, while she's still within arm's reach. So she gets grabbed by Ronan and dragged into hell while he manages to just barely escape. This is really the only way they could have brought this game to a close with a villain as powerful as Abigail. Which, like, I don't know why the ghost of a 10-year-old girl is this strong, but who knows, hatred or some shit. There was honestly so little that could have been done with the way they've set this world up. The only way out in that writing perspective was to kill her, and they knew Ronan couldn't do that. No one could have done that. So she had to be tricked. Very, very, very poorly tricked. And the story ends with Rex not having charges pressed on him by Joy, and with Joy reuniting with her mom, and Ronan reuniting with Julia. Game end. Honestly, there wasn't any other way they would be able to get a happy ending and keep it somewhat interesting. Just like the majority of the other plot points, the ending came from a convenience. I don't know how many times I've said that word so far in this video, holy crap. Convenience, again, of Abigail being too stupid to step away from Ronan, which brought her to be damned. If they'd spent more time focusing on the actual paranormal, maybe they could have done something like trapping her within a body she's been tricked to possess. But there's no proof that anyone has the means of adding sigils or symbols or like curses to prevent ghosts from leaving an area. Which is even more weird because Joy actually makes mentions of the memory residue, like that allows Ronan to see into people's memories and see into the past. And she's even made a mention from when Iris and Rose were scribbling around in the insane asylum cell that there was a ward for protection. And the only cryptic ones are Abigail's notes, which are just poems. They don't do anything. Like I said, the paranormal's made out to be kind of mundane. It's like they had this idea for a noir ghost story, but decided to make the main character dead too. There's no big excitement to interactions in the living or the dead worlds, or mediums using tools to keep spirits at bay to avoid being labeled as crazy. Ghosts are basic and they're honestly boring. And really, we don't see any other ghosts with abilities like ours. Anyone that's stuck just stands around, waiting, wallowing, and complaining. Any other spirit present is just someone who was murdered or had suffered in life. So there's no agency for them to, like, do anything. I really, really don't like this game, but I'd still give it like a 4, maybe, out of 10. Like, there's some good things about it. The wandering is interesting, being able to pass through common walls and doors to break line of sight with the demons and everything like that. The graphics fit really well, and with Ronan being constantly translucent, the effect is consistent and I never really had any glitches with it. When it came to the main voice cast, their performances were pretty damn good, but any of the NPCs felt like they were a bit of a second thought. A curse of trying to pad out a short story, I think. If they had removed a lot of the padding that was there through side quests and collectibles, it could have been a way better romp. Or even if they had an actual connection to the main story, lots of these were just completely unrelated. They could have focused on the story more and used it to expand it further. They could have had some fun with Ronan recollecting noir style about the hints he finds, but they took the easy way out and just slapped them into a mess of readable collectibles. Murdered Soul Suspect was a experience. It wasn't a good one. It was repetitive and handholdy experience. Like I've mentioned before, the gameplay got boring really quickly, the story didn't let you feel like you were discovering anything on your own. Your leads were mostly nonsensical and left me more confused than accomplished. There's too much that keeps me from suggesting a playthrough of it yourself, but if you're curious, I'd recommend watching a complete playthrough by someone else and just reading the artifact stories on the Wikipedia. Hell, even just going through a cutscene video will give you what's needed about the story. There's just not much else to praise. It was given a great foundation and promise, but it just couldn't deliver with what we were given. It's a huge shame because it's a game that I thought would have some really good potential. The framework was there, the story was there, but they didn't do anything with it. It's like they had this story that they wanted to tell, but they didn't know exactly how to tell it. They just had that bare idea and didn't expand upon it. I just haven't been so unexcited about a noir detective game where you're playing as a ghost. And the worst part is that I can't even play out my fantasy of getting a refund for it because I waited too long on Steam.